Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Andrew Knox in for Gordon. America can't stop Israel from going to war with Hezbollah. That's what a U.S. envoy told Lebanese officials recently. Still, the U.S. is urging Israel to find a diplomatic solution with the terror group. At the same time, one Israeli official is warning America to keep an eye on Iran, the greatest threat to the future of the world. CBN's Julie Stahl reports.
The U.S. is warning Hezbollah that it can't stop Israel from going to war to stop the terror group's daily attacks on the north.
Hezbollah's provocations threaten to drag the Israeli and Lebanese people into a war that they do not want.
Still, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is urging Israel's visiting defense minister to seek a diplomatic solution.
Another war between Israel and Hezbollah could easily become a regional war, with terrible consequences for the Middle East.
Yoav Gallant says Israel is determined to establish security in the north and bring back some 80,000 citizens evacuated from their homes. He urged the U.S. to focus on heading off another threat, Iran getting nuclear weapons.
The greatest threat to the future of the world and the future of our region is Iran, and time is running out.
Inside the country, Israel's Supreme Court ruled Tuesday that ultra-Orthodox young men must now serve in the military. The community, which now has 65,000 young men, has been exempt from military draft since 1948, when Israel's first prime minister allowed 400 students to study full-time as a spiritual blessing to the state.
And broader Israel said that there needs to be equality. How can there be tens of thousands who are being exempt from military service when everyone else is serving?
Former Knesset member Dov Lipman tells CBN News some of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition partners are ultra-Orthodox who don't want their people drafted.
There's no way these ultra-Orthodox parties can stay in a government where that's the government policy, and that could collapse the government and lead to a new election.
And in what could be considered a local U.S. victory for Israel, Democrat Representative Jamal Bowman was defeated in a New York primary race. Bowman had accused Israel of genocide in Gaza, and his defeat is seen as a referendum on progressives' attitudes toward Israel. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, certainly lost in the news in recent months are those 80,000 Israeli citizens evacuated and displaced. And this ruling from Israel's court that ultra-Orthodox young men must now serve. I mean, it's been since 1948 this law was in effect, so things are really heating up. Many in Lebanon concerned about war, so let's please keep the entire region in prayer. In other news, the Department of Homeland Security is searching for dozens of subjects of concern who cross the southern border. Ephraim Graham has that story and more from the CBN newsroom. Ephraim?
Andrew, DHS says more than 400 migrants entered the U.S. from Central Asia through a smuggling network affiliated with the terror group ISIS. Agents have arrested about 150. Others are known to be in 17 states. The whereabouts of more than 50 are still unknown. Most who crossed the border were allowed to stay because they were not on a terror watch list. Recent attacks in Russia, such as this weekend's assault on churches and synagogues in the Republic of Dagestan, have raised concerns about ISIS and its offshoots. Ballot security is a major concern this election year. Many states are taking stronger measures since 2020 to ensure results can be trusted. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke tells us the Department of Defense is also getting involved.
In America, election equipment is considered critical infrastructure. Given its importance, the Defense Department enlisted a research team from 2 Maryland universities. Their task? A 3-year risk assessment focused specifically on the vulnerabilities of voting machines.
So we are looking at all the things that could possibly go wrong. Those could be an actor trying to disrupt something, maybe, trying to break a machine or trying to vote for somebody that, who's dead or things like that. But they could also be honest mistakes.
Team member Dr. Natalie Scala of Towson University tells CBN News this is the perfect assignment for academia rather than government officials to tackle.
For academics, we look at it based purely on data, so we don't necessarily have a favorite candidate. We don't necessarily have an agenda to push. We just want that vote to stay the way it is. The moment somebody casts it to the moment we count it, we want nothing to happen there. And what can we do to make sure that that integrity stays there so the American people can have their votes counted?
The project's focus involves optical scanners used by 70% of voters and ballot marking devices used by the remaining 30%.
We are looking at it from the, the average American standpoint and making sure that you feel confident and secure in the processes that we have.
In the past, Scala's lab provided training for Maryland poll workers, a project she says will add to their current research.
We don't want poll workers to make honest mistakes, and those mistakes become risks, or problems. And we also want poll workers to be able to identify if something is going wrong.
This is the first of the lab's 3-year Pentagon grant. The team will consider cyber, physical, and insider threats, an overall approach that hopefully results in protecting other critical infrastructure like the power grid. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
I want to turn now to the severe flooding in the Midwest and that dam at risk in southern Minnesota. Emergency officials say the Rapidan Dam is still in imminent failure condition. Floodwaters have breached the western bank, sending water rushing around the side. Residents living downstream have been evacuated, with the area getting 18 inches of rain in recent weeks. It's been 5 years since Hurricane Michael, a Category 5 storm, devastated Florida's Panhandle. Today, Lighthouse Church in Panama City Beach stands as a testament to perseverance. Brody Carter brings us their inspiring story of recovery with the help of CBN's Operation Blessing.
The scars from Hurricane Michael, a Category 5 hurricane, are still seen here in Panama City Beach, Florida, even 5 years later. Here are the remains of the original Lighthouse Church building. Now, just a concrete slab that once supported a growing congregation.
And when you're in Florida, if it's a 3, you don't worry about a 3. But when it went to a 5, I said, okay. So we packed everybody up and we evacuated.
The first Category 5 storm to strike Florida's Panhandle. Michael became the most powerful hurricane to make landfall in the U.S. It claimed 59 lives and caused an estimated $25 billion in damage.
Sadly, I have to go get a demolition permit to take down the remainder of the building.
Pastor Cole Bailey leads Lighthouse Church. It used to be located in Panama City Beach. That is, before the storm caved in its roof.
This is one classroom. This will be the east side classroom. I've never been through anything like that in my life. There was no comparison. When Michael came through and it ripped off 100,000 roofs in an hour or whatever it was, these numbers were insane. We knew we were in big trouble.
After 24 years of serving this community, Hurricane Michael took everything except the ground it stood on. Its foundation in faith, however, remained unshaken.
Just days after the storm hit, and we're all still just in shock, I get a call from someone from Operation Blessing.
That led to a partnership which mobilized volunteers bringing chainsaws, hot meals, and a spirit of perseverance. Pastor Bailey saw it as the power of faith in action.
They came in with resources that blew our minds. They came in with hundreds of volunteers. Just at one location, we were able to serve 38,000 hot meals after that storm. One location. We lost count at our other location at 20,000 meals. Resources are coming in. Equipment is coming in.
Stephanie Robinson has been part of Lighthouse since it started in 2000.
I knew God was going to move, but it's hard to see in that, that devastating time of just everything that God had kind of built just plummeting. And but it was amazing to watch the community and family of God just immediately step in.
Despite the storm, Stephanie says the church found its true strength in the faith of its people.
If the Lord didn't save you from it, He's going to bring you through it.
Today, the new building stands in a renovated movie theater across the bridge in Panama City.
And it is a beautiful picture of God taking the destruction and bringing something out of the ashes, really and truly, and just exploding here.
But this church, right here, is so thankful for when Operation Blessing landed on our property. It helped us through the hardest time of our lives. I cannot express to you how life-changing and how powerful that ministry is.
The story of Lighthouse Church is a bright example of how a church body can suffer well, believing that God can and will use the storms in this life for his glory, if we allow him to. Reporting in Panama City, Brody Carter, CBN News.
A true testament of perseverance indeed. Operation Blessing coming alongside to help. Andrew?
Thank you, Ephraim. Ashley, I so appreciate Brody's report because I was part of a video crew about 48 hours after the storm 5 years ago.
Wow.
I went down with a producer and a cameraman, and we were doing stories about how Operation Blessing was helping. And that worship service we saw a brief clip of, I was so touched. It was 48 hours or so after the storm, building demolished. And the church body is worshiping.
Wow.
I showed up to work and capture
goodness.
what OB was doing, and this church body, the membership, is worshiping God.
Yeah.
And then people came to the church to receive meals from Operation Blessing, but then we realized this isn't enough. And so I'm no hero for doing it, but we got in the car, and OB people got in the car, and we went out to the communities, inner cities, to the elderly.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you for those of you who years ago gave to Operation Blessing. The fruit still remains. It was just a life-changing experience. Actually, one of the people we helped literally played us a guitar. He was singing praises to God,
my goodness.
thanking CBN and the partners for what we had done. It's just amazing. You know, Operation Blessing's Disaster Relief Fund is ready to help people when disaster strikes. And if you gave many years ago to that effort, you can see fruit still remains. That's so important to Jesus. He says, I want you to produce fruit that will remain. Did you see that pastor weeping? Thanking you for what you'd done. If you'd like to contribute to the Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund, you can give us a call, 1-800-700-7000. You can text OBDR to 71777. And you may say, well, there's not a current disaster you're in right this moment in Florida, but we're ready. Hurricane season is coming. And more than anything, thank you for the difference you're continuing to make all these years later. 35 years ago this month, China's communist government crushed a pro-democracy movement in Tiananmen Square. Today, China is trying to silence dissidents in the West through a network of spies. Dale Hurd interviewed one of those spies for this exclusive report.
This is the first former member of China's secret police to speak publicly about Beijing's active campaign to silence Chinese pro-democracy voices overseas. Calling himself Eric, he was an agent for China's Ministry of Public Security, or First Bureau, from 2008 until last year, when he defected to Australia.
My job was to collect the intelligence about the country I was in and the anti-communist groups there. I was supposed to infiltrate these groups, make friends, and trap targets for return to China.
Eric was coerced into becoming an agent in 2008 after his arrest for supporting a pro-democracy party and given a choice. Help the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, catch dissidents abroad or go to jail. He chose the former, taking on fake identities such as a property executive and an anti-communist freedom fighter to lure dissidents to countries where they could be abducted and returned to China. But because he secretly protected targets and says no one was arrested because of his work, he was concerned his handlers would become suspicious, and he decided to defect.
I didn't want to be responsible for any targets being returned to China. And I tried to make sure that it did not happen. And this made my bosses suspicious of me.
Eric's testimony confirms our reporting and the reports of others that a Chinese government spy network is threatening, entrapping, and even kidnapping critics of the Chinese Communist government.
These are kind of the methods being used by the CCP. Again, this is not an allegation we're making. This is what their official documents state.
Laura Harth, who tracks Chinese transnational repression for the human rights group Safeguard Defenders, says we can assume there are agents like Eric operating in the U.S., but these CCP agents are only part of a larger campaign by the Chinese government called the United Front.
So the United Front is something that's being defined by the Chinese Communist Party as one of its secret or magic weapons. And essentially its task is two things. On the one hand, expand the so-called circle of friends of the Chinese Communist Party. So co-opting or influencing politicians, media, academia, entrepreneurs. But on the other hand, and this is something that is often overlooked when we talk about United Front, Its task is also to crack down on critics, right? To silence them, to divide them.
An Amnesty International survey of Chinese students in 24 universities in Europe and North America found that many live in fear of surveillance, harassment, or intimidation by Chinese agents. It's unclear how many of the so-called Chinese police stations used to control dissidents are still operating in the U.S. On paper, it might be less than 5. The one above a noodle shop in New York we showed you last year was finally shut down by authorities.
Police stations, or so-called police stations, is really the tip of the iceberg. We need to take a broad view and understand what the wider picture looks like and the amount of proxies and networks that the Chinese Party state is operating.
Bob Fu, the founder and president of the Texas-based ministry China Aid, helped lead the 1989 Tiananmen Square protest as a student. He still faces harassment by Chinese agents 35 years later.
Recent few months, even, I had been harassed and receiving threats with text messages, and also CCP agents booked hotels under my name and then called the police from New York to Los Angeles, from Washington, D.C. to Houston, basically for bomb threats. Said Bob Fu was about to set off bombs.
Pro-democracy activist Li Jianji in Los Angeles, who Chinese agents have tried to kill 3 times, told us Chinese Americans are still surrounded by constant threat of danger. In a special message to his former colleagues still trying to harass and trap Chinese dissidents, Eric encouraged them to recognize the nature of the Communist Party, that it's a fascist, totalitarian party, and that carrying out these illegal and secret activities in various countries is not good for them. And he challenges them to instead do something good for human civilization. Beijing's continued repression of overseas Chinese begs the question, if those Chinese who fled communism for freedom still live in fear of the Chinese Communist Party, are they really free? Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, as mentioned, Dale and our news team have been sounding the alarm on this concern for 2 years, and now with a former member of the secret police coming out and sharing this, it's cause for concern for Americans. And Bob Fu being harassed for 35 years. I was in Tiananmen Square in China a few years after the protests, and it was a powerful experience just to be there, soak in the history. But I'm reflecting back on that. That's a long time ago, and 35 years later, there's still active harassment toward him. It says a great deal. Our government, who's ever in power, needs to be very vigilant regarding China. Well, a few weeks ago, best-selling author Mitch Albom was in our studio, and I had the wonderful honor of interviewing him on 700 Club Interactive. Today, I'd like to share that interview with you, our 700 Club audience. Take a look.
New York Times best-selling author, columnist, playwright, and screenwriter Mitch Albom has sold over 41 million books, 2 of which were made into award-winning TV movies. Most known for Tuesdays with Morrie, the best-selling memoir of all time, Mitch has also written several other bestsellers, like his latest work of fiction, The Little Liar. In addition to writing, Mitch is also a humanitarian. After the devastating earthquake hit Haiti in 2010, Mitch has operated Have Faith Haiti, an orphanage in Port-au-Prince that provides a loving home where children can thrive.
All right, well, joining us now is Mitch Albom. Mitch, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Appreciate you being here. Finished The Little Liar yesterday. And what a unique approach to the Holocaust, to World War II. Why did you take this particular angle on the Holocaust?
Well, I wanted, there have been a lot of great books that have been set during the Holocaust. I didn't want to repeat them. I wanted to try to do something original. And I also felt that we live at a time where truth is under great attack. Everybody seems to be picking their own truth. So I wanted to do a book that showed how during that time, truth was really one of the biggest victims. So I created a story about a little boy who's never told a lie in his life. And when the Nazis come to his village in Greece, they find out about him and they decide to use him as a weapon. So all the other people are taken away to a ghetto, but he's kept aside, and they say to him, listen, we'll let you go back to your family. All you have to do is stand on these railroad tracks and tell the people who are coming to the trains that they're going to new jobs or new homes, and that everything will be good. And when you're done, you can go back to your family. And he does this for several weeks thinking he's telling the truth because he's never told a lie before. And only when he sees his family being put on the trains, along with this little girl that he loves, does he realize that he's been lying all this time and that these trains are going to the concentration camps. And he's not allowed to go. And the book follows what happens to him and the little girl that he loves who's sent away and his family over the course of the next 40 years and the effect of that one lie, the first lie he ever told in his life, on him and on all of them for all those years afterwards.
And what seems to come through is, I presume I'm correct about this, your personal sadness and desire to honor those who lost their lives and loved ones really shines through here, does it not?
Yeah, I grew up in a neighborhood where a lot of older Jewish people lived, and I used to notice that they wore long sleeves in the summertime. And I would ask my mother, how come they're wearing long sleeves? And she said, well, they have numbers tattooed on their arms and they don't want people to see. And I said, why? And she said, well, I'll tell you when you're older, you know. Well, I got older and I found out why. And I feel it was my obligation. You know, I've been blessed with some success as a writer, and I felt it was my obligation before I finished my writing career to at least write one story that continued to tell what the horrors of what happened during that time. Because we live in a time right now, sadly, you may have seen this recent poll where 20% of Americans think the Holocaust was a myth. And another 30% can't say for sure if it was a myth or not. That's 50% of people who can't come out and say this actually took place. So I did a great amount of research and wanted to at least contribute one book that said, yes, not only did it take place, but it was horrific and it changed the lives of many people involved.
And it was orchestrated by the Wolf, Hitler, who, as I recall, you didn't mention him by name.
I refused to.
Yeah, I was going to ask why his name is never mentioned. It's the Wolf, the Wolf.
Yeah, and I show how he was able to do what he did, not because he had bigger guns, but because he had bigger lies. And that's where the whole concept of truth, you know, the book is narrated by the voice of truth, who talks about how truth has been ruined and destroyed by so many people over time, and particularly this guy and this group who lied to his people about if we just get rid of the Jews, our lives will be better. If we just get rid of the Catholics, the homosexuals, the gypsies, our lives will be better. And people fell for that lie and did his bidding for a number of years.
Yeah. Loss is a significant part of this book. Could I read just a quick excerpt? I'm going to put the glasses on. Yeah. Page 183 or so. You say, there are certain truths that are experienced universally. One of them is loss. The hollow in your heart as you stand by a grave, the lump in your throat as you stare at your destroyed home, loss. Yes, loss is universal. Everyone in their lifetime will know it. Tell us about a dear one you lost, Chica, and many of your readers know her through the book.
Well, the truth is, Andrew, that loss has kind of, you know, permeated my writing life ever since Tuesdays with Morrie. You know, when I lost my old college professor to ALS. And I've written about loss in Five People You Meet in Heaven and in other books. Chica was a little girl who was brought to our orphanage after her mother died. She survived the earthquake. She was born 3 days before the earthquake, survived it, lived in sugar leaves at night. She slept in a bed of sugar leaves for 6 months because her home was destroyed. She was brought to us when she was 3. She was the loudest, bossiest kid we had in our orphanage. And then at age 5, her face began to droop, and we discovered that she had a brain tumor, something called DIPG, which is always fatal, unfortunately. We brought her to America thinking, you know, we would be able to figure out a cure and she'd be able to go back. And unfortunately, there was no cure, but she stayed with us. They told us she wouldn't live for after 4 months. She'd be gone in 4 months, but she didn't die in 4 months or 8 months or 12 months. She lived 2 years, and during that time, we didn't find a cure, but we did find a family. And it was a blessed time. And I end that book by saying, you know, we didn't lose a child, we were given one. And she was glorious, and she taught me an awful lot about life.
And I love that you told her one day you were heading off to work, right? Yeah. And what was her response?
Well, at that point, I had to carry her because she couldn't walk anymore, and I carried her wherever she went. And we were playing coloring, and then I looked up. I said I had to go, and I said, Chica, I gotta go. And she said, no, Mr. Mitch, stay and color. I said, Chica, I have to work. She said, Mr. Mitch, I have to play. I said, well, it's not the same thing because this is my job. And she crossed her arms and made that pouty face, and she said, no, it isn't. Your job is carrying me. You know. And of course, I laughed. And then I realized, like, truer words are never going to be spoken to me because, of course, my job was to carry her. All of our jobs is to carry our children and carry, you know, those who need us. And if we're blessed, as I have been, then it's your job to carry the poor children of the world and the forgotten and the abandoned, like we have at our orphanage. And I thought about that image of carrying her and how so much of my life I have been carrying my work, my money, my reputation, you know, celebrity, whatever. And then you have to drop all that because you have to pick up a 7-year-old to carry her around. And there's no comparison. That is an honorable carry. And what we carry defines us. And she taught me that.
And it's humbling, too. Now, you mentioned the orphanage and the beautiful children you've encountered. It's not like you and your wife had your eyes set on having an orphanage for 20, 30 years.
Who does? No, it was an accident. I went after the earthquake with a pastor who thought his orphanage had been destroyed, and I just went to help out, and it hadn't been destroyed, but it was overrun, and I started to kind of really feel for these kids, and they were so happy and joyous, even though they had nothing. I mean, everything was destroyed. And we began to come back and build showers, toilets, a school, a kitchen, and eventually the pastor, who was in his 80s, said, you know, I don't have any money to run this place. And I kind of blurted out, well, I could probably run it. How hard could it be? And he said, thank you, Lord, and he disappeared.
He's out.
He's gone, and I've been running it ever since with my wife, and we've been there every month for the last 14 years, and we'll continue to do so if the fates allow. It's very difficult right now for the rest of our lives.
And have continued to meet incredible kids. Natty, is that how I say her name?
Natty.
Natty.
Yeah, Natty. Natty was, I think, God's sort of reward in some way to us for the sadness that we endure with Chica. Natty came to us when she was 6 months old. That's her. She weighed 7 pounds total.
And you call her a reward?
Well, here's why. She came to us and only weighing 7 pounds. She was near death. She hadn't eaten anything but sugar water. We brought her to America like we brought Chica to America, thinking that, okay, we'll put her on this nutrition program and we'll just get her back up to snuff, and then she can get back to Haiti. But every month that went by, she became more and more kind of part of our lives. And when her first word was Dada, you know, and next thing you know, it's 2 years already, and she's thriving now. And she is the joy of our lives. And there are moments, honestly, Andrew, where sometimes I wake up and I go, something's wrong. She's going to be sick. She's going to be sick, because Chica was sick. And then I realized, no, she's not. She's perfectly healthy, and she's going to live a long, long time. And I think that's God's way of showing us that, you know, for every sadness, there's a joy. And it just so happened to come in 2 little girls in our lives.
You and your wife are very busy, visiting the orphanage every month, et cetera. You still have time to write. And are there a lot of ideas in your mind now that you're selecting from?
Oh, yeah. I always say that I have way more ideas than I have years left on Earth. So I'll die with many books unwritten. But I just try to write books that bring hope and some inspiration, and try to find tales that can do that. I've been doing that ever since Tuesdays with Maury, and I found out I have a great readership that enjoys that type of writing, and I enjoy it, too.
Can I ask you a last question regarding your writing? I think the millions who love your books would like to know. I mean, when you're not out researching or in the archives or in a country, Greece, right, for Little Liar.
Yeah.
When you're home, I presume, writing, or in the office, what is it? The same time every day, early morning, late at night? Are you on a particular pace?
Yeah, I try to do it the same way every day. Get up first thing, you know, brush my teeth, have a little something to drink, and go right to writing. I don't turn on any news. I don't listen to anything. I don't read anything. I want my brain to be totally clear. And I go for only about 2 or 3 hours. And then I'm out of gas. You know, I could sit there all day, but nothing else is going to come. And but I've learned that you do it every day. You treat it like a job. And always quit when it's going well. Don't quit when it's going bad, because when it's going bad and you say, I'll come back tomorrow, when you get up in the morning, you're like, I don't want to go back to that. That wasn't fun. So quit when it's going well. You look forward to getting up and doing it again.
I said last question, but if I may, do you ever go back and read something you thought was really superb and you're like, ooh, maybe not as strong as I thought, or you thought something was weak and you say, that ain't too bad?
I rarely think it's ever superb. I try not to go back and read it, because once it's in print, I never read it, because it's like I can't fix it. And if I can't fix it, I don't want to read it. So, yeah, I'm always kind of disappointed when I read it, thinking I could do better. But that's why you have your next book, so that you get a chance to do better.
And I want to let you all know, Mitch's book, The Little Liar, is well worth the read. It's fantastic and is a brand new approach on the Holocaust, World War II, and some real compelling characters and quite a surprise at the end. That's all I'll say.
Thank you.
Mitch, thanks for being
It's a
with us.
pleasure. Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Welcome back to the 700 Club for this CBN News Break. Oklahoma's Supreme Court blocked the nation's first religious charter school. The virtual Catholic school was set to open in the fall, but justices ruled it violates both the U.S. and Oklahoma constitutions because it uses public money for a religious purpose. An attorney for the school says they will take the case to the United States Supreme Court. A New York City man is on a mission to feed the homeless, and it's a calling that comes from personal experience. A decade ago, Henry Thomas was looking for a way to give back after living through a time where he didn't have a home. That's when he came up with the organization Free Food for the Homeless. Thomas recruited his son and volunteers to hand out free food and water around New York City. 10 years later, Thomas says he's looking for even more volunteers to take that mission nationwide. I want to let you know you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.
Well, soon after Yiyan was born, doctors only gave him 72 hours to live. He needed life-saving surgery that his parents could never afford.
Shortly after Yiyan was born, his grandmother threw him a traditional blessing ceremony and announced that his ancestral nickname would be Tutu.
It meant he would be surrounded by blessings.
Yet the next day, Yiyan got sick.
His face turned blue and his stomach swelled like a ball. He couldn't keep anything down, and he got worse and worse.
Yiyan had a severe intestinal obstruction.
Doctors said an operation was risky, but it needed to be done as soon as possible to open up his intestines. Without surgery, the doctors said he wouldn't last 72 hours. His intestines were rot and he died from sepsis.
Surgery costs had to be paid up front, but Mrs. Ma is poor. She called her husband, who was working out of town, and the two contacted everyone they knew to borrow money.
One of my relatives said the operation was too expensive, and I should take the baby home to die. It was just his fate. I was angry and hung up on him. I don't understand why people treat life with such indifference.
Meanwhile, Yiyan's time was running out.
He laid in bed with his eyes closed. When I touched him, there was no warmth. I was so scared. This was my only son. I didn't want to lose him.
Doctors told Mrs. Ma that Operation Blessing might be able to help.
When Operation Blessing heard how serious Yiyan's condition was, they agreed to fund my baby's surgery on the same day.
Soon, Yiyan was on the road to full recovery.
When he opened his eyes and looked at me and smiled, I couldn't hold back the tears. Now he digests food well. His stomach isn't swollen and he's gained weight. And during this time, a woman from Operation Blessing visited me and told me everyone was praying for my baby. She shared God's love and said not to be afraid, just to trust God. She said God loves my baby and me. It was the first time I knew there was a God who would bless us. And in honor of God's blessing, I changed Yiyan's nickname to Tianyo, which means grace. I thank the Operation Blessing donors. Because of you, my baby is alive.
In the middle of that story, I audibly said, "Oh, I just think this story is such a beautiful representation of what CBN and CBN partners, 700 Club partners are doing around the world." Not only are CBN 700 Club partners helping people in real, tangible ways, but you're spreading the message of the gospel, the love of Jesus Christ to people who need it most around the world, literally. And I've heard people say sometimes the holiest, most powerful thing we can do is to help others in need. So if you are watching this story and your heart is bursting with joy, your heart is bursting with the desire to help people in need like you just saw in this story, and you're not a CBN 700 Club partner, I would encourage you to become one today. Now is the time to act. Give us a call, 1-800-700-7000. You can become a partner that way. You can also join us by going online at cbn.com. You can also do my personal favorite, as I like to say, and as Gordon always likes to mention. It's really simple. All you have to do is text CBN to the number 71777. When you do that, you're going to get a text message with a link. Click that link and it's going to send you over to our giving page, where from there you can choose which level you would like to become a 700 Club partner. There's 700 Club, which is $20 a month. Some of you might already be at that level. There's 700 Club Gold, which is $40 a month. And we just always ask that you prayerfully consider what the Lord might be putting on your heart. Again, we just say thank you to our CBN 700 Club partners for being a blessing to that young boy, to those families, and so many other people around the world. And in addition to becoming a CBN partner, we're actually going to send you something in return. This is our latest teaching. It's called Biblical Answers to Today's Questions. It's Gordon and Andrew. And Andrew, I'm going to bring you in on this. So you guys had an awesome conversation. People sent in questions asking biblical advice. So what was your take on that?
Gordon did an amazing job. He really did. I know he's a very wise man, but he just laid it out. What does Scripture have to say? And it was profound, just that Scripture addresses all these cultural issues we're facing.
Totally.
It's there.
Yeah.
And he presented it. It's easy to comprehend, but deep as well. And there's a great devotional workbook that goes along with it.
So whenever you become a partner, this is what we're going to send you. Again, this is our way of saying thank you. It's Biblical Answers to Today's Questions. You get the DVD. You can also get it streamed, so you can listen to it, watch it on any smart device. You also get the workbook. So if you want all of this and you want to help people in real, tangible ways and spread the message of the gospel, become a CBN 700 Club partner today. Give us a call, 1-800-700-7000. Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone is a two-time Olympic gold medalist. This summer, she's in pursuit of a third gold medal at the Paris Olympics. She used to be crippled with anxiety before and after each race, but not anymore. In an interview with sports reporter Will Dawson, Sydney tells how her faith set her free.
It's going to be Sydney's time again, and it's a world record again!
She's the world's fastest 400-meter hurdler and a two-time Olympic gold medalist. In 2016, at only 16 years old, Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone became the youngest person in nearly 40 years to make the women's Olympic track team.
When did you know that you were not just good, but maybe even great?
I mean, I started running when I was 6, and I think it's kind of hard to tell when you're that young. You know, you're just running for the fun of wanting to run. But I think it wasn't until I got to high school, coming into now freshman year, but my first race was an indoor 300, and I actually won the race against some seniors. And I think that's when it kind of hit me that, wow, maybe I can actually, you know, hang with these girls.
She did more than hang with them. Sydney quickly became the best hurdler in the country, qualifying for the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio. In spite of all the accolades and success, Sydney was struggling.
From an early age, as a runner, anxiety and fear plagued you. Where did that come from?
I think anxiety and fear for me kind of just came from my desire to want to be perfect in all things. And the reality is that nobody can do that. And I think for me, that was a constant battle internally of how do I get as close to perfect as possible in a world where you can't control your circumstances or what happens to you all the time. For me, it constantly left me in a state of fear. And especially on the track, racing against other people who are as good, if not better, that was a constant battle of, am I enough? Will I ever be enough, or will I ever measure up to the standard that I have for myself and that other people have for me?
Sydney did not medal at the Olympic Games in Rio and returned home for her senior year of high school. The reception wasn't what she expected.
I remember receiving messages actually on Instagram and people saying stuff like, you made it all the way to the Olympics not to get a medal. But I just knew from that point on, I was like, I need to figure out how to deal with this fear because I can't keep living like this.
Her next big hurdle was qualifying for the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. In 2019, she competed in the World Championships in Doha, Qatar. For Sydney, anything short of first place would be unacceptable. As a perfectionist, her second place finish was heartbreaking.
Being able to make it all the way there on the world stage and still come up short, I think was just devastating for me. I still couldn't understand what all the fear was, all the anxiety, how to handle it.
Sydney grew up in a Christian home, though she never fully trusted God. The loss and growing anxiety forced her to cry out to him.
God, I need you. You know, there's no way I'm gonna heal from all of this unless it's with you. And so during COVID, that was when I truly started seeking him. It was reading Colossians 3 that flipped a switch for me in terms of my thinking and just kind of how I saw everything. It just made the whole gospel make sense. The lens in which I viewed life had truly switched, and understanding like that in and of myself, I have nothing to offer God, but it is just the righteousness of Jesus covering my life based upon my faith that is presentable before him.
Though Sydney had come up short in the World Championships, she had still qualified for the 2020 Games in Tokyo. While there, with a new focus on God, she set a new world record, taking home gold in the 4x400 relay and the 400-meter hurdles.
When you crossed the finish line, what were the emotions?
Relief, praise, thankfulness, excitement, disbelief, all those different things at once, but truly just like, thank you, God, for hearing my prayers and answering them, and just being kind to me. I think that's the number one thing every time I cross the line is like, God, you have not failed me. Even when I lose, I still win because I learn, and you still prune me and guide me and sustain me. And yeah, the girl who once used to cross the line and still feel empty inside, I now have joy even in the midst of any circumstance.
Today, Sydney is training for this year's Olympic Games in Paris. Win or lose, she has a new purpose. In her new book, Far Beyond Gold, Sydney discusses her battle with anxiety, fear, and letting go of her striving for perfection and simply running the race set before her.
Knowing that I'm running with that purpose of achieving the goal, and the goal is not gold medals, like the book says, it's far beyond gold. It's, achieving salvation, which is already mine in Jesus, but obviously running the race of the Christian life well. Even on the track, before races, that's what I'm reminding myself of, is setting my mind on the things above. Knowing that the Lord is looking down on my life right now and me wanting to honor him, and he's glorified in that. And so it just became a joyful way of experiencing life and living life. And yeah, it's way better than I was thinking before.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm definitely going to be rooting for Sydney in these upcoming Olympics. But I'm just so grateful for her honesty and her transparency about her struggle with feeling enough and her struggle with anxiety and fear and perfectionism. And I think as Christians, we can get so trapped by the idea of perfectionism. I have to perform well in order for God to love me. And that is the farthest thing from the truth. God loves you as you are. Now, he doesn't love the sin that might be in our lives. He doesn't love the fleshly things that we might still do, but he's a good, good father. And oftentimes when we come to the Lord, he's not asking you to be perfect before coming to him. He's just asking you to come to him. And then let him do the work. Let him clean house in your heart. Let him change you from the inside out. Sometimes it's an instantaneous change, and sometimes it's a journey. But I just want to encourage my brothers and sisters in Christ today that you are enough. You are loved by a heavenly Father who sees you and who knows you. He knows every hair on your head. He knows the things that you're gonna fall. But here's the thing, he's gonna encourage you to get back up again, because that is what he's all about. He gives second chances, third chances, fourth chances. So I just wanna thank Sydney again for her just transparency, and I just wanna encourage you guys, you are loved. You don't have to be perfect to come to Jesus. Come to him as you are. And if you're dealing with anxiety, we have a new online resource. It's called Calm Your Heart and Mind. And you can download this mental health resource and prayer guide for free. Just go to cbn.com/calm to download your free copy. God bless you guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you tomorrow.